Here are the steps for how to plan an ESL grammar lesson. Step 1 is to set the context. So basically, you want students to kind of activate their prior knowledge they have about a topic. So for example, if you're teaching about the simple past, maybe you could just kind of informally ask students about like, what did you do last night or something like that, or get students to talk to their partner about it. So whatever your grammar point is, just kind of a very simple kind of warm-up activity that gets students just kind of generally like thinking about a context that they could use that grammar point that you're going to teach them. The second thing is to introduce the grammar. So this is generally done through a listening passage or a listening exercise or a reading passage. And then during those things, you would listen once or read once quickly and have some very simple true or false questions. The second time listening or the second time reading, you could kind of answer some more detailed kind of comprehension questions. And then at that point, you would get students to focus on the grammar that you're going to be teaching based on those things. And so once you've introduced the grammar, and then you would kind of focus on the rules, give some explicit examples, and do some explicit teaching about the grammar. After that, you would do some controlled practice. So often the textbook is a good source for this, but kind of like some fill in the blank, maybe like irregular simple past verbs. Students would have to like figure out the form of the verb and the correct spelling and that kind of thing. And then after that, you can do a bit of freer practice. So there are a ton of different activities and games you could do that would focus on the grammar, not in like a very controlled way, but kind of students have a little bit of freedom to use it in kind of the way that they want. After that, you might want to do some review, give some homework, and then of course in the next class, do some more review and then also follow up with that. All right, so if you like these activities, please be sure to check out my book, 39 No Prep, Low Prep ESL Grammar Activities. Hi everybody, this is Jackie from eslactivity.org. So today I'm going to talk about how to plan an ESL reading lesson. There are a few simple steps that you can follow. So step number 1 is to set the context. So whatever students are reading about, you want them to be able to relate that to their normal real lives. This helps them activate their prior knowledge about that topic and makes whatever they're going to read easier to understand for them. So for example, if your reading is about maybe like a travel disaster, someone lost their wallet and then they got something stolen from them, you can ask students to talk with their partner for 1 minute about any kind of travel disaster that they had. For example, they missed the bus, their wallet was gone, they lost their passport, something like the plane was delayed, etc. And then after that, give students a pre-reading task. So there's a million different things that you can do, and check out the blog article for some more ideas and tips for that. But a couple simple things are just to pre-teach some of the vocabulary words in that reading. If there are some important words that you think that students don't know, definitely pre-teach those words. The second thing that you can do is to get students to do a prediction activity. So get students to read the headline and then they can talk for maybe 1 minute with their partner about what the article will be about. And then step number 3 is the gist reading activity. So you want students to practice reading more quickly. Reading very, very slowly, word for word for word, is not actually how people read. People skim through stuff looking for the information they want. So we want to give students some practice doing that in English in our classes. So a gist reading activity is maybe you could give students a very simple task, like answer these 3 true or false questions. You want to deal with the big picture. Or maybe like, what are the names of the 2 people in this story? Any just very, very simple question that you might want students to answer, and then give them a short amount of time to read it. 30 seconds, 1 minute, etc. Students will complain a little bit, but I force them to do it. And by the end of my class, they kind of get used to it, and it's not actually a big deal. And then students very quickly compare with their partner the answers to, say, those true or false questions, and then quickly go over them as a class. Don't dwell on them. Don't explain all the answers in detail. That will come later. All right, the next step, number 4, is the main reading task. So this is when students read for detail. I give students some comprehension questions, and of course, I let students read the questions before they do the reading. They want to know what they have to read for. This is kind of a key thing that students will have to do in, say, their TOEFL or TOEIC or IELTS exam. They'll always teach your students to read the questions first, and then I give them a few minutes to go through the reading in more detail. and then students compare their answers with a partner, and then we check answers together as a class. If there is some confusion, some difficult questions, I'll actually spend a bit of time in class going over them. All right, so the next step is a post-reading activity. So there are a ton of games and activities and things you can do after students do a reading to get the most out of it. There are a bunch of ideas, and please be sure to check the blog post for some of my best ideas for that. After that is an optional activity, homework, or review of whatever you learned in that reading or whatever you taught in that reading exercise. It kind of depends on the students, it's really up to you, but a nice homework activity to follow a reading would be to give some writing homework related to the topic. Okay, so if you like this video, please be sure to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment below with your favorite ESL reading activity. Also be sure to check out my book, ESL Reading Activities for Teenagers and Adults. Hey everybody, this is Jackie from ESLspeaking.org. So today I'm going to talk about some first lesson ideas for new teachers. So if you're going to teach ESL or EFL somewhere, and it's one of your very first days, you're walking into class, you're feeling super nervous and worried, here are some things you can do in that very first lesson to kind of get started off on the right foot. The first idea that I have is rules and/or the syllabus. So talking about some classroom rules is never a bad idea. So things like food or drinks, using cell phones in class, what time students should be there, should they bring a textbook, should they bring a pencil, having a name tag, all of that kind of stuff. So I think if you talk about that in the first class, it kind of sets the expectation that you're a serious teacher, you mean business, and there are some rules that students will have to follow in order for your class to go more smoothly. If you teach at a university, you'll often, or not often, but almost always, you'll be expected to talk about your syllabus. So talking about assignments and homework and the exams, so kind of the basic outline of that kind of stuff. So I know it's a little bit boring, but it is necessary information. So be sure to do that if you are teaching in an environment where you need to do that. All right, so the second thing you can do if you're a new teacher and it's your first class, this is great for kids, is to play the name game. So I usually will get students to tell me their name and then something that they like. And then we go around in a circle. So I start first, and I'll say, my name is Jackie and I like cats. The next person would say, her name is Jackie and she likes cats. And my name is Ted and I like ice cream. Then the next person goes, her name is Jackie and she likes cats, and his name is Ted, he likes ice cream, and my name is blah, blah, blah. And then we go around in a circle. And usually I will be the last one to go, and it's a serious test of my memory, and but it is super helpful for remembering students' names and then kind of remembering like one fun fact about them. And if the students in the class don't know each other, it's also a great way for them to get to know each other's names and kind of just to learn one quick thing about them. That one is obviously better for younger learners and also better for smaller classes. I would never do this in a class of like 30 or 40 students. It would be very tedious. However, if you teach a larger class, you can even put students into groups of like 10 and have them do this together. It would work as long as the students are well behaved enough and kind of at a maturity level where they can handle doing something like that in a smaller group. Okay, so the next one is ball toss. So this one is better for younger learners. So on the ball in permanent marker, I'll write questions, kind of get to know you questions. Like, how old are you? What's your favorite food? How many brothers or sisters do you have? And students take turns tossing the ball to each other, and then when they catch it, whatever question is under their right thumb is the one that they have to answer. So they can quickly look at it, read out the question, and then say their answer, and then toss the ball to somebody else who like looks where their right thumb is, reads out the question, and then answers the question. So this is kind of a fun way. The novelty factor is high. Students love like throwing a beach ball around the classroom. It's kind of fun. Nobody gets hurt because the ball is very soft, and yeah, it's just kind of some entertainment and kind of some fun for the first day, and it's also quite helpful for students to get to know each other a little bit. All right, the next one, the expert. So this is more of an activity for higher level students. So I get students to write down 3 things that they are an expert in that they think other students would be interested in. So for me, I always write down something like Survivor, my favorite TV show, and maybe I'll write like cooking Korean food, and then I'll write something like playing tennis. So those are kind of 3 of my hobbies that I like to do, kind of in a different variety. They're not all like TV shows or they're not all sports or something like that. And then, so students will do the same about things they know a lot about. And then I put students into pairs, and they have about 5 minutes, and they can have a conversation with each other about those topics. So I'll just get them to bring the piece of paper around with them, and if the conversation kind of has a lull in it, they can just quickly look at their partner's paper and then say, oh, you know a lot about Survivor, and then ask a question about Survivor. So after the 5 minutes is up, I get them to switch partners, and they do the same thing for another 5 minutes, and then I'll often get them to switch partners again, kind of depending on how much time I have. So this activity is great because students get to know usually like 2 or 3 other people in the class quite deeply. It's amazing if no students know each other in your class, because then at the end they kind of feel like they've made 2 or 3 new friends that they can like come to the next class and see, and then just say hello, and they know their names and they know a little bit about that person. So number 5, you can play this game called Find Someone Who Bingo. So on a bingo sheet, you can write different things that some students in the class would answer yes to, but not all the students. For example, like has a brother, has a cat, is from or has grown up in whatever city that you're living in, loves pizza, doesn't like vegetables, etc. So fill up the board with kind of appropriate things for your class that you kind of guess. Some would say yes, but some would say no. Then give each student a grid, and they have to circulate around the class asking people questions. For example, do you like vegetables? Do you have a cat? Do you love pizza? If the student says yes, they have to cross off that square, write the student's name, and then they have to ask one follow-up question. So for example, if someone said, yes, I love pizza, they could say, what's your favorite topping? Oh, I love mushrooms. And then they could write mushrooms in the square next to that person's name. All right, so those are the best things you can do in class on the very first day if you're a new teacher and need a few ideas. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe. Also be sure to check out my book on Amazon, 39 ESL Icebreaker Activities. There's a whole bunch more ideas. Hi, this is Jackie from ESLactivity.org. Today I'm going to talk about how to plan an ESL speaking lesson. So first of all, getting students to just speak isn't really a good focus of the lesson. It's better to choose a more specific grammar or vocabulary point, and then students can practice that through speaking. So the example I'll choose are irregular past tense verbs, and then the theme of the lesson might be past vacations of some kind. So the first step in planning an ESL speaking lesson is to set the context. So it could be very simple. You could just get students to maybe just shout out the last place they went on vacation. Or it could be thinking about some maybe like travel disasters that could happen, like you lost your passport, you lost your wallet, something like that. You could do it together as a class, or you could just get students to talk with a partner just for a minute or two. This is very short. All right, the next thing is to focus on meaning. If you teach language, it's a little bit useless if you teach language removed from situations in which students can use it. So if I'm teaching irregular past tense verbs, then I want students just to automatically think in their head, oh, I can use this to talk about past vacations or something that happens in the past. That's why it's important to set the context and then also spend some time focusing on meaning. By that, I mean you can have a focus of the lesson. So for example, past travel stories, something like that. All right, then focus on forms. For this example that I chose, point out the most common irregular past tense verbs, such as like ate and went. And don't forget the negative forms as well as question forms. Then I focus on pronunciation. It's not super helpful to teach language to students if they can't really say it. And I know I feel a bit shy about teaching pronunciation, but it actually is quite valuable, and it just takes a minute or two to do it. So do some kind of repeat after me things. All right, the next thing I do is some controlled practice. So there are a million worksheets on the internet. I sometimes make my own worksheets. You can often find little exercises in the textbook as well. So just have a look and you should be able to find something quite easily. I get students to work on it by themselves, and then I have them very quickly compare together with a partner, and then we quickly discuss answers as a class. After that is some freer practice. So there's a whole range of related games and activities you could do to talk about holidays or vacations using irregular past tense verbs. If you need some ideas for that, be sure to check out my book, 101 ESL Activities for Teenagers and Adults. I'll put the link right up there for you. All right, so then after you've done some freer practice, optional thing to do is to give some homework or to do some review in the next class. I love to review things because if you just tell students the first time, they're not going to pick up on it. Students, when you're learning a language, you have to see things multiple times over and over and over again to really get it. All right, so that's all from me. Those are the steps to plan an ESL speaking lesson. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment below about your favorite ESL speaking activity. Hi, this is Jackie from ESLspeaking.org. So today I'm going to talk about what is the test, teach, test approach to teaching English. So test, teach, test, or TTT for short, if you hear that lingo somewhere, is basically when you have learners complete a task or do a test without any help from the teacher. The goal of this first stage is for the teacher to gather information about what the learners know or don't know about that certain grammar point or vocabulary set or topic. So after giving this test, the teacher compiles the results and kind of takes a look at what students know and what students don't know, and then the teacher teaches students what they need to know or kind of the gaps that they might have in their information about that certain topic. After that, the teacher gives another test or task to see if students have gained any new information about it. So I'll give a quick example. It's quite useful for something like the simple past. So unless you teach absolute beginners, it's likely that your students already know a good bit about this grammar point because it's one of the first ones that they might see in even a very beginner ESL textbook. So most students could say like, last night I ate pizza, no problem. But they might struggle with last night I didn't eat pizza. It's not ate, last night I didn't, it's the simple present form, last night I didn't eat pizza. They might also struggle with question forms. So last night, did you eat pizza? That's often quite difficult for students. So for example, if you give a test, you can maybe see, okay, students know the simple past for regular verbs, they know the simple past for irregular verbs, however, they don't know the question forms or the negative forms. So in that case, you could do a little bit of a teaching session and then give a test and then see if students have picked up that knowledge. So if you want some more teaching tips, be sure to check out my book, Tips for Teaching ESL or EFL to Teenagers, University Students, or Adults. Hi, this is Jackie from ESLactivity.org. Today I'm going to talk about how to plan an ESL lesson. So this is a very common question that teachers have. You might have to do a demo class or an interview. You might have to prepare for something like the CELTA or the Delta course. And of course, you just want to prepare great lessons for your students. So first of all, choose a focus. Something like speaking or reading isn't a focus. It's not great because it's just not detailed enough. And it's a little bit fuzzy around the edges. What actually are students practicing? I'm not sure. So it's better to choose, for example, a specific grammar or vocabulary point that students can work on. So after you've done that, be sure to set the context. So setting the context can be as simple as talk to your partner for 1 minute about what your favorite food is, and maybe you're talking about food that day. Or it can be something, maybe you're talking about memories from the past using the simple past. So it can just be something like, oh, just tell your partner a fun memory from high school, just a very quick warm-up thing. The second thing you can do is focus on meaning. So whenever you teach language to students, they have to know a context and a situation in which they can use that language. So for example, if students are learning the simple past and your context is memories, they can say, oh, talking about memories, this is the language that I can use for that. All right, the third thing to do is focus on forms. So that gets into the nitty-gritty details of, like, for example, the simple past, I ate pizza. Ate is an irregular past tense verb. Or I went somewhere. Went is an irregular past tense verb. And then you could also do the regular past tense verbs for I watched, something like that. And then also don't forget question forms and negatives as well. All right, the next thing is to focus on pronunciation. We want students to be able to use this language when speaking as well, so do a little piece on pronunciation. After that, the next step is to do some controlled practice. So if you're using a textbook is often the best way to do this. They'll often have little practice exercises in there for your students to do. I always get my students to compare first with a partner, and then we come together as a class and just quickly check the answers. The next step in an ESL lesson is to do freer practice. So this is where I get creative and I come up with some fun games or activities that students can do. If you need some ideas for that, check out one of my books, 101 ESL Activities for Teenagers and Adults. All right, the last step in planning an ESL lesson is homework or review in the next class. It's really up to you what you do, and if you want to do this, but I generally like to review things because I think if you only cover something once, it's a little bit hard for students to get a grasp on it. And they'll actually understand it a lot better if you go back over it again and again and again and again. All right, so that's about it for me. That's how you plan an ESL lesson. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment below with your top activity for teaching English. Hi, this is Jackie from ESLactivity.org. So today I'm going to talk about how to plan an ESL listening lesson in 5 simple steps. So the first step is to set the context. So whatever the listening passage is about, get students to activate their prior knowledge about that topic by talking to their partner for maybe 1 or 2 minutes about it. So for example, maybe someone in the listening is talking about their favorite Christmas memory. You could have students quickly talk to their partner for 1 or 2 minutes about a Christmas memory. Or you could get students to shout out maybe some Christmas vocabulary words that they know. Just whatever it is, just help students kind of get a little bit familiar with the topic and then also just remember what they already know about the topic to bring to that further lesson. All right, the next step is to set a pre-listening task. So if there are lots of vocabulary words that are important, but you think the students might not know, you can pre-teach this vocabulary. Or you could do something like a prediction activity. So you could show students kind of the title of the listening passage and get them maybe to predict what's going to happen. All right, the next step 3 in a listening lesson is to do a gist listening. So that means that students are listening kind of for the big picture or the main idea. So for this, you'll want to set a very simple task. I generally will do like 2 or 3 true or false questions, kind of big picture, big level questions. I get students to listen, they compare with their partner, and then we check answers together as a class. All right, so then the 5th step is a more detailed listening activity. So I give students some comprehension questions, I get them to read the questions, and then we listen 1 more time. Students answer the questions, compare with their partner, and then we compare together as a class. The final step is to do some post-listening activities related to the passage the students just heard. There's a whole ton of choices for this. If you need some ideas, be sure to check out my book, ESL Listening Activities for Teenagers and Adults. All right, so that is how to plan an ESL listening lesson. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling me about your favorite ESL listening activity. Until next time, bye everybody.